There were only 3 things Zeke Keller knew for sure in life. Coffee was sacred, duct tape could fix nearly anything, and if something had teeth longer than your fingers, you didn't turn your back on it. So when the 9-foot-tall predator crouched just outside his drop-hab's solar perimeter, glaring through the dusk with those eerie twin gold eyes, and dropped 2 snarling, writhing cubs at his feet, Zeke did what any sensible ex-terraformer would do. He stood very, very still. Then muttered, "You've gotta be kidding me." The creature, a Tharnian hunt mother if he wasn't mistaken, which meant matriarchal, territorial, and known to shred armored drones when provoked, growled low. Not a threat. Not quite. It tilted its huge, bone-crested head, lips parting just enough to show fangs longer than steak knives. Then it backed away. Not ran. Not leapt. It backed off slowly, deliberately, the way a wild animal might from its den when it knew it was leaving something precious behind. The cubs snapped and hissed, both about the size of large dogs and covered in sinewy midnight fur with spiny ridges down their backs. One lunged at his boot. Zeke yelped and danced backward, nearly tripping over his own landing ramp. "What the hell is going on?" he whispered to no one, clutching his utility belt like it might grow a plasma rifle. It didn't. He'd been assigned to Outpost 6 on Mistral 4 for peacekeeping duties while the Federation negotiated mineral rights with local Tharnian tribes. The post was remote, barely manned, and no one in command thought they'd be dealing with active wildlife. The Tharnians, though intelligent, were notoriously private. They viewed humans as annoying groundhogs, beneath their notice unless provoked. But this? Dropping cubs? That was unheard of. The hunt mother vanished into the trees beyond the outpost's perimeter, not making a sound. Zeke was alone, with 2 alien murder kittens now chewing on the reinforced edge of his ramp. "Yup. Definitely need more coffee." He retreated into the hab, activated the perimeter shield, muted blue glow pulsing around the encampment, and peeked out through the reinforced window. The cubs remained. One was gnawing his boot where he'd dropped it during the shuffle. The other had found his discarded ration bar wrapper and was now growling at it like it owed it money. Zeke thumbed his comm. "Central, this is Keller at Outpost 6. We have a situation." No response. He tried again. Static. Of course. Mistral's upper atmosphere was notorious for cutting signal in and out. That's why he'd been sent alone for routine survey checks, nothing high stakes. Except now, he apparently ran a day care for alien apex predators. "Fantastic," he muttered, running a hand through his buzz-black hair. "Just fantastic." He had 2 options: wait and pray the hunt mother came back, or try to care for the cubs. Option 1 was fine until they started wailing. Not crying, exactly. More like howling. Shrill, bone-rattling, predator calls that bounced off the cliffs and echoed for kilometers. Zeke swore one of his molars vibrated loose. He scrambled outside again, this time holding a thermal blanket and an old protein pack. "Hey! Hey, easy now!" he called, holding the blanket like a peace flag. "Let's not alert the entire continent, yeah?" The smaller cub lunged again, but he tossed the protein bar with a precise flick. The thing latched onto it mid-air, snarling happily. Its sibling pounced, and they wrestled over it like starving wolves. Zeke wrapped the thermal blanket into a loose nest on the ramp, watching as the pair cautiously sniffed, then settled in, still growling intermittently but quieter. He crouched near them, keeping a healthy 3 feet between himself and those teeth. "This is temporary," he muttered. "Very temporary." By morning, they'd clawed their way into his storage locker. Zeke groaned as he surveyed the chaos. Emergency rations shredded. Water packs punctured. His backup coffee pods gone. "You little monsters," he said, exasperated. One of them, he'd started calling it Nip, hissed playfully, tail flicking. The other, Tyr, had claimed his old tool bag as a sleeping spot. He didn't know much about Tharnian biology, but they seemed healthy, hyperactive, and already displaying signs of territorial imprinting. They followed him around, sniffed at his tools, growled when he walked too far. Once, When he stepped out to realign a solar panel, they both launched themselves after him and tried to chase a bird thing off his shoulder. He had to dive for cover. That night, he didn't activate the full shield perimeter. Just the inner alert barrier. Part of him, the very stupid part, didn't want to lock them out. Day 3, Zeke tried again to reach command. Nothing. Probably weather interference again. Or Tharnian jamming tech. He was on his own. That's when the weird part started. Around midday, he caught movement in the trees. A shimmer. Not a full Tharnian, but a scout drone. Organic shelled biomechanical wings tucked in. The kind the Hunt clans use for observation. He held very still, watching it buzz above camp. It circled once. Twice. Then flitted off without aggression. That night, he left fresh meat strips out for the cubs. They didn't touch them. Instead, they brought him a gift. Zeke blinked at the pile of bird creature bones left neatly by his door. Are you feeding me now? Ter licked his hand. Oh, we're screwed. By the end of the week, Zeke wasn't just taking care of them, he was training them. Not intentionally at first. But the cubs were absurdly intelligent. Responded to tone, hand signals, even basic vocal cues. Stay, he told Nip as he unlatched the cargo crate. Nip sat. Don't eat that, he warned when Ter sniffed his medkit. Ter paused. Looked back. Then walked away. It was uncanny. Like they wanted to learn. At night, they curled up beside the ramp. Nip liked to sleep across his boots. Ter guarded the door. Zeke started jotting notes. Not for a report, he knew Central wouldn't believe him, but because something told him this wasn't random. They'd been left with him. And someone, or something, was watching. On day 9, they were gone. He woke to silence. No wrestling. No claws on metal. Just the distant whisper of wind across Mistral's canyons. Zeke ran outside. No prints. No bones. Nothing. His camp felt empty. Abandoned. Come on, he called. Nip? Ter? No answer. He spent hours combing the tree-ling. Left food out. Tracked broken foliage. But the trail ended cold. That night, he couldn't sleep. Not because he feared they'd return, but because he feared they wouldn't. He didn't even realize how attached he'd become. Then, just before dawn, he heard it. A low growl. Not hostile. Familiar. He stepped outside. The Hun mother stood at the edge of the trees. The cubs flanked her, grown now. Taller. Sleeker. Gleaming black fur slick with rain. But it was their eyes that stopped him. They looked intelligent. And then, before he could move or speak, both dropped into crouches. And with perfect synchronization, they bowed. His heart stuttered. His breath caught. The Hunt mother growled again. Lower this time. Almost like a purr. Then she stepped forward. And in her massive, clawed paw, she held something. A tribal charm. Tharnian origin. A symbol of recognition. Of honor. She tossed it at his feet. Zeke knelt slowly, picking it up. It was warm. Humming with faint bioelectric pulses. When he looked back up, they were gone again. But this time, he knew it wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Zeke didn't tell anyone about the charm. Mostly because there was no one to tell. His comms were still shot, the relay satellite above Mistral 4 stubbornly unresponsive. Federation outposts had protocols for delayed contact, but this was way beyond a weather glitch. Something was interfering deliberately. And Zeke had a feeling he knew who. The charm he'd received from the Hunt mother now sat beside his bunk. It pulsed gently at night, casting an amber glow across the wall like a heartbeat. When he tried scanning it with Federation tools, the readings came back inconsistent. Organic structure, non-metallic yet electromagnetic reactive. Half-living tech. Alien art. Or maybe both. But it wasn't just a trophy. It was a message. And as days passed, the message began unfolding. The first real sign came 3 nights after the cubs' return. Zeke had just finished ration stew and was polishing the busted solar coupler when the motion alarm chirped. Faint. Barely enough to register. But distinct. Someone, was inside the perimeter. He grabbed his sidearm and crept outside, flashlight off. His boots crunched against the dry gravel as he reached the ramp, scanning shadows for movement. Then he heard it. Not a growl. Not a roar. A whistle. Sharp. Rhythmic. And unmistakably intentional. He froze. It came again. 3 tones. High, low, high. Then silence. He whistled back, mimicking the pattern. Nothing. Then a whisper of wind, and when he turned, Tyr stood behind him. Except, it wasn't just Tyr anymore. The cub had changed. Grown leaner, more angular. Its back ridges had hardened into visible armor plates. Its eyes, once feral, now held clarity. It held a stick in its mouth. Not chewed. Offered. Zeke blinked. Fetch? The creature dropped it at his feet. No. Not fetch. Carved into the stick's surface were shallow grooves, lines, etchings, symbols. Zeke knelt, turning it over. There, among the marks, was a crude depiction of his outpost. A circle. His ramp. The solar tree. And next to it, 3 smaller shapes. 3 Tharnians. Him. And the 2 cubs. Then further down, new symbols. Arrows. Fire. Motion. A map? Zeke looked up, but Tyr was gone again. By morning, Zeke had analyzed the stick's marks and plotted the direction it indicated, 4.2 kilometers northwest. Dense forest. Unmapped territory. Exactly where the Federation had warned to avoid. Clan territory, do not enter without diplomatic escort. But if the Tharnians wanted him to go, well, hell. Who was he to say no? He packed light, water, rations, medical gear, a scanner, and a backup power core. He left a note in the log just in case anyone from command ever showed up. Went hiking with aliens. Back by lunch? He doubted they'd appreciate the humor. The hike was brutal. Mistral's gravity was slightly heavier than Earth's, and the terrain didn't care for human feet. Razorweed snagged his boots, and wing bugs the size of dinner plates dive-bombed him every hour. But he pressed on. By late afternoon, the woods thinned. Ahead, a clearing shimmered with heat. Zeke dropped to one knee. It wasn't a clearing. It was a camp. Dozens of HuntClan warriors, taller than even the matriarch, moved in a slow, disciplined circle. Training. Some leapt from branch to branch. Others sparred with curved bone blades, their strikes fluid and lethal. And at the center sat the Hunt Mother. Still. Watching. She turned. Her eyes locked onto Zeke like searchlights. And then, shockingly, she nodded. Zeke rose. He expected resistance. Expected a warning roar. Instead, one of the younger warriors approached. She was smaller than the others, her fur lined with red dye markings. She held out a clawed hand. Zeke hesitated. Then extended his own. Her claws curled around his wrist, gentle but firm. She turned, motioning for him to follow. So he did. What followed was unlike anything Zeke could have prepared for. He was led through a ceremonial arena, flanked by warriors, and into a half-circle of stone totems. There, the Hunt Mother stood again, this time holding not a weapon, but a small vial. It shimmered with dark liquid. She spoke. Not in English. Not even in Federation standard. But in tones. A language built of rhythm and inflection. Not words. Meaning. Zeke recognized some of the sounds. They were the same whistles the cubs had used. He stepped forward and, with a steady hand, took the vial. She pointed to her heart. Then to him. Then to the jungle beyond. Zeke nodded. You want me to prove myself? Her expression didn't change, but something in her gaze softened. Then Tyr and Nip stepped forward from the crowd, proud, silent, standing by his side. Zeke realized this was their rite of passage. And now, his too. The jungle at night was worse than the desert. Hotter. Meaner. Zeke had a blade, the vial, and his instincts. And he was being hunted. The hunt mother had released something. A trial beast, he guessed. Meant to test courage. He moved silently, ducking under branches, watching for movement. Hours passed. Then, snap. A shape lunged from above, 6 limbs, glowing eyes, snapping jaws. Zeke dodged. Rolled. Slashed. The blade skittered off armor. The thing screeched and vanished. Zeke's pulse pounded. He didn't chase. Instead, he opened the vial and dabbed the liquid across his skin. The smell hit instantly, iron musk pheromones. It masked his scent. Within minutes, the jungle quieted. Predators ignored him. Even the trial beast hesitated. Zeke crouched behind a boulder, waiting. Then it charged again, but this time, he didn't run. He leapt sideways, angled the blade, and drove it up as the beast lunged. The creature screamed, spasmed, and fell. Zeke staggered back, panting. Covered in sweat. And blood. But alive. At sunrise, he returned to the camp dragging the beast's carcass behind him. The Hunt clan met him in silence. Then, one by one, they howled. Not in mockery. In respect. The Hun mother stepped forward, touched his chest with one claw, and turned to the others. More howls. Louder. Then something happened Zeke never expected. She motioned to the cubs. They came forward, and sat beside him. The Hunt mother knelt, and bowed. The leader of the fiercest predator clan on Mistral 4, bowing to him. Zeke swallowed hard. What the hell is happening? And then the realization hit. They weren't training him. They weren't testing him. They were adopting him. By the next day, he had a name. Not Zeke. Not Keller. But Zarda. Roughly translated, the one who tamed Firefangs. He was given a bone circlet, woven with the hair of his trial beast, marked with clan dyes. Not a trophy. A symbol. He wore it back to his outpost like a soldier might wear medals. Except now, he wasn't alone. Nip and Tyr followed him. No longer cubs, but fully bonded hunters. They responded to his voice, his gestures, his mood. He'd left Earth as a nobody. A repair tech. A man who spent more time talking to machines than people. Now, he was something else. A bridge between species. A mentor. And somehow, a father. That night, the stars over Mistral 4 were unusually bright. Zeke sat on his ramp, watching the horizon. The cubs curled up at his feet. Then the charm, the one from the Hunt mother, flared. Zeke jumped. The pulse was stronger now. Directed. He grabbed his scanner. Readings flashed, biosignal detected. Encrypted. Non-hostile. Coordinated. Coordinates pinged. A cave system 5 clicks east. New message. Zarda, prepare. Others come. Watchers awaken. Zeke stared at it. Others? He looked down at Nip and Tyr. They stared back. Eyes glowing. He nodded slowly. So it wasn't just a rite of passage. It was recruitment. Something big was coming. And they wanted him ready. They came out of the sky like falling knives. 5 black ships. No lights. No warnings. Just heat blooms and sonic cracks as they tore through Mistral IV's atmosphere and landed hard near the eastern ridge, right where Zeke's scanner had pointed the night the charm flared. Zeke watched from a high cliff with Tyr crouched beside him, ears flat, muscles taut. Nip circled behind them, growling low. The ships weren't Federation. They weren't Tharnian either. They were something else. He zoomed in through his monocular. The hulls were obsidian slick and glistened like insect carapace. No visible windows. No insignia. Just curves and seams, as though grown, not built. Then the hatches opened. Out stepped beings that didn't move like anything Zeke had ever seen. Elongated, sinewy, armored in flowing plates that shifted as they walked. No faces, just masks that pulsed with a cold, inner light. and they moved like predators. Even Tear flinched. Zeke whispered, "That's not a greeting party." No one responded. Because everyone knew it wasn't. Within hours, the Hun clans gathered at the ridge. Dozens of them. Silent. Armed. Ready. Zeke stood in their midst, wearing his bone circlet and holding the charm that pulsed brighter with every passing minute. The Hunt Mother stood beside him. Her presence was thunderous, calm, immovable. They knew this would happen, Zeke murmured. This was never about a rite of passage. The Hunt Mother grunted once. Then pointed to the valley. The enemy, whoever they were, had begun unloading massive crates. Machines unfurled. Tall structures rose from the dirt like skeletal towers, emitting faint pulses into the sky. Scanners picked up static. Communications vanished. Then came the sound, a low, harmonic hum that vibrated through bone and earth. Not a weapon, but something worse, a claim. This wasn't a war. It was an incursion. They were here to consume. To terraform. To replace everything alive. "Tell me we're not alone," Zeke muttered back at his outpost, throwing on his chest rig and activating what little defense systems he had left. "No signal from orbit. No response from command," the AI replied flatly. "Satellite interference now absolute." Figures. He packed rations, medkits, a plasma cutter, flare rounds, and the last working drone, a tiny aerial model he named Stubby, after its single broken rotor blade. Tyr and Nip flanked the door as he exited. They had grown leaner, faster, sharper. In just weeks, they'd become fully fledged scouts. Warriors. He tapped the charm once. "Let's make this count." The plan was insane. But Zeke was used to that now. The Hun clans couldn't launch a full assault on the invaders. Not yet. Their weapons, though devastating up close, would be chewed apart by the aerial drones swarming the alien camp. But if someone could sabotage those drones? Someone small. Unassuming. Human. "Let me guess," Zeke said, crouching beside the Hun Mother's map. "I sneak in, cause havoc, get out before I'm vaporized." She handed him a bone-sheathed knife and pointed at the charm around his neck. Then she nodded. Zeke sighed. "Knew it." Night fell like a weighted curtain. Zeke moved through the jungle with Tyr and Nip ahead of him, acting as forward scouts. The enemy drones buzzed above, but Zeke's biopulse stayed dim thanks to the Tharnian scent mask applied to his gear. He crept closer to the alien camp. Every movement was calculated. Measured. A wrong step could end it. The first tower stood 50 feet tall and emitted that same disturbing hum, warping the air, bending the trees nearby. Zeke slid up its side using the vine rig he'd crafted from Hun clan netting. At the summit, he found the control node. A swirling orb of metal and light. He hesitated. Then stabbed the knife straight into it. The orb convulsed, flashed, and then imploded silently, like a bubble collapsing into itself. Below, 2 drones fell from the sky like stones. Zeke didn't wait. He rappelled down and sprinted to the next one. Then the third. By the time the fourth was breached, the sky was silent. And that's when everything went wrong. A shriek tore through the jungle. Not animal. Not machine. Both. Zeke whirled and saw one of the invaders stepping through the shadows toward him, its mask flaring with cold fire. It moved with impossible grace, long arms ending in talons that shimmered like molten glass. Tyr charged. The creature didn't flinch. It spun, caught the cub midair, and slammed him into a tree. "Nip! Tactical!" Zeke raised the plasma cutter and fired. The bolt struck center mass, and bounced off. The thing staggered but didn't fall. Then it roared, a sound that cracked branches and sent birds into panicked flight. Zeke dove rolled, came up slicing with the Tharnian blade. It caught the creature's thigh, and black ichor sprayed. Nip tackled from behind. The 3 of them wrestled in the mud, claws, fire, screams. And then a flare lit up the clearing. Zeke looked up. The Hun clan had arrived. Dozens. Maybe more. And at their head, the Hunt Mother. What happened next would later become legend. The Hun mother moved with godlike precision, every step a blow, every claw a scythe. She clashed with the alien like a tidal wave, driving it backward with strike after strike. Zeke barely pulled Tyr out of the way in time. The rest of the Hun clan joined the fight, each pairing off with the invaders' foot soldiers now emerging from the ridge. Zeke dragged himself to a high ledge and activated Stubby. "Go, little guy," he whispered, and launched the drone. Stubby soared over the battlefield, recording everything. Because Zeke had a plan, and it required eyes in the sky. Back at the outpost, he uploaded the footage to his offline data core. The images were undeniable: non-Federation hostiles, active conflict, native allies. Even if Command couldn't hear him now, the data would reach orbit when the storm cleared. And that evidence would change everything. But first, they had to survive. 3 nights of non-stop battle followed. The invaders weren't endless, but they were coordinated. Machines, beasts, and infantry units that moved in silent unity. They adapted quickly, learned formations, exploited weaknesses. Zeke worked as tactician, scout, saboteur, whatever the moment demanded. He taught the Hun clans to rig tripwires, redirect heat signatures, and use terrain to their advantage. In return, they taught him how to hunt with silence. How to strike without being seen. Together, they became something else. A hybrid force. One night, Zeke found himself sharing a kill circle with the Hunt mother and 2 elders, tearing alien armor from a downed enemy, studying the tech. It was biomechanical. Symbiotic. And worse, it was spreading. "You're saying they're not just terraforming?" Zeke muttered, poking at the writhing mass still twitching. "They're converting living systems," the Hunt mother hissed. Not fear. Rage. Zeke sat back. "They're here to overwrite the planet. Not conquer. Replace." By the 5th dawn, the sky cleared. Zeke rushed to the signal tower he jury-rigged, hoisted the data pod, and launched it via the compressed flare cannon. Stubby's core followed, slingshotting toward orbit. With luck, the Federation would receive it. But there was no time to wait. Because the final assault had begun. 3 enemy carriers rose from the ground near the ridge, emitting war pulses that knocked trees flat. The central structure, a towering spire, pulse red, growing taller by the hour. The Tharnian shamans whispered of an awakening. A hive. If it wasn't stopped now, it never would be. Zeke climbed the ridge with Tyr and Nip at his sides. The Hun clans followed, battle-worn but unyielding. They looked to him now. Not as an outsider, but as Zarda. He raised the charm above his head, and it blazed like a small sun. "Time to take it back," he said. And the Hun clans roared in agreement. They hit the enemy hive just after twilight. Zeke led the charge through the spore fog, slicing drones and ducking fire pulses. He carried a backpack full of thermal charges, homemade, unstable, deadly. Tyr dove from above, disabling towers. Nip ran interference. The Hun clans surged behind, coordinated like never before. They reached the core of the hive. Zeke planted the charges. Then, a blur. The enemy leader. It crashed down from above, wounded but unbroken. Mask cracked, one arm missing. It lunged. Zeke stood his ground. But he didn't have to stand alone. Tyr. Nip. The Hunt mother. All 3 moved in unison. Claws. Teeth. Blade. And when the creature fell, finally, it was Zeke who jammed the last blade into its core. He activated the detonator and ran. The explosion that followed cracked the sky. Flames lit the jungle. The hive collapsed inward. And as the smoke rose high into the atmosphere, Zeke stood at the ridge, burnt, bloodied, and victorious. Nip lay beside him. Tyr panted, muzzle soaked. The Hunt mother howled behind them. And in that howl was triumph. The ash cloud lingered for days. Mistral Ivy's red sun broke through it on the 3rd morning, spilling light over a jungle still smoldering with victory. The alien hive was gone. What remained was scorched earth, shattered towers, and the eerie silence of a battlefield where death had overstayed its welcome. Zeke sat on the highest ridge, overlooking the crater they'd created. He didn't speak. Neither did Ter, who lay at his side, tail curled protectively near his boots. Nip dozed nearby, muzzle twitching in her sleep. They had survived. But they hadn't come through unchanged. Zeke rolled up his sleeve and examined the mark along his forearm. The skin shimmered faintly now, like the charm he still wore. A side effect of prolonged contact with Tharnian pheromones and the hive's biotech, the medkit had warned. He didn't care. He felt stronger. Sharper. More. Behind him, the Hunt clans worked. They weren't rebuilding. They were changing. For centuries they had hidden from the stars, guarding their world with tradition and tooth and claw. Now, they had a war hero. A human. And that changed everything. The Federation ship broke atmosphere 4 days later. Zeke spotted the telltale burn trail from the cliff and didn't bother to alert the clan. They'd sensed it coming long before it appeared, a hum in the roots, a shift in wind pressure, a ripple through the charm he wore. He met the ship alone. Standard Scout-class corvette. Markings clean. Command-grade signal flaring on the nose cone. The ramp hissed open as it landed, steam curling around Zeke's boots. Out stepped Commander Reyna Goss, Federation liaison to Mistral 4. Starched uniform. Blinking visor. Eyes sharp. She stopped cold when she saw him. Keller? He nodded. Been a while. She blinked. You're alive? Apparently. Then she saw his arm. His gear. The bone circlet. The way the jungle seemed to watch him. What the hell happened down here? Zeke just handed her the drone's core. You'll want to read the logs. They debriefed for 6 hours inside the outpost. Zeke told her everything. From the Cubs' arrival to the alien incursion, the bonding, the training, the battles, the final assault. She listened, lips tight, fingers flying over her console, cross-referencing what little telemetry they'd recovered from orbit. By the end, she leaned back, eyes wide. This changes everything. Yeah, Zeke said. Figured. She looked at him for a long moment. You know what they're calling you up there? Zeke raised an eyebrow. The Tamer. The Beast Whisperer. Zarda. That last one's accurate. Reyna shook her head, exhaling. You bonded with them. Became one of them. Command will lose their minds. Let them. I didn't do it for medals. No. She studied him. You did it because they left you the Cubs. He looked away. They didn't leave them. They entrusted them. Reyna nodded slowly. Then tapped her console. The Federation wants to send a delegation. Zeke narrowed his eyes. To apologize or to negotiate? Both. The Hun mother received the news without expression. She stood beneath the great spire, an ancient tree the clan used for council, and listened to the translation from one of the young warriors. When it was finished, she turned to Zeke. Federation comes, he said. To talk. Maybe learn. Maybe lie. But they're coming. She held out her clawed hand. Zeke met it. Then she handed him a small token, this one bone white, carved in swirling symbols. New charm? He turned it over, puzzled. No, said a deep, growling voice behind him. It was Elder Carr. One of the oldest in the Hunt clan. That is command. Zeke blinked. What? You led in fire. You bled with us. You raised our young and earned their bow. Now you lead. Zeke stared down at the token. It hummed in his hand. By the time the Federation delegation arrived, Zeke wasn't wearing Federation gear. He wore Hunt clan leathers, a blade at his hip, and the command token around his neck. Tyr and Nip flanked him, taller than before, now fully grown and gleaming like obsidian wolves. Commander Reyna introduced the diplomats, the cultural attachés, the science officers. Zeke said little. He let the Hunt mother speak first. She addressed the diplomats in Tharnian, but her tone needed no translation. It was clear, powerful, and very close to a warning. When Zeke translated, he kept it short. She says Mistral 4 will never be owned. Only respected. The lead diplomat cleared his throat. Of course. We seek peaceful understanding and partnership. Zeke leaned in. Then you better listen, not just nod. It took months for the Federation to grasp what Zeke already knew. The Hunt clans weren't savages. They were strategists. Scientists in their own right. Masters of biomechanics, scent communication, and organic tech that rivaled anything in orbit. They hadn't needed help. They needed a reason to trust. And they'd chosen a human not because he was strong, but because he cared. Zeke became the liaison, by their choice, not the Federation's. He guided both sides. Brokered alliances. Developed shared outposts where humans and Tharnians trained side by side. Nip taught soldiers how to move without making a sound. Ter oversaw supply trails. Zeke? He just made sure no one forgot who started it all. One night, months later, he stood again on the ridge, overlooking the old battlefield. A lot had changed. The jungle had grown back. The crater was now a training ground. But the stars remained the same. Do you think it's over? Reyna asked beside him, arms folded. Zeke thought for a moment. Then shook his head. No. I think it's just the start. Of what? He looked at the sky. Us. Them. Together. She raised an eyebrow. You trust them that much? He smirked. They trusted me with their kids. Reyna laughed. Fair point. They stood in silence. Until a familiar growl rumbled nearby. Ter emerged from the trees, flanked by two small figures. Zeke blinked. Are those? Yeah, he said, smiling. Cubs. Reyna stepped back. Ter had cubs? She's a mother now. He knelt as one of them pounced into his lap, yipping. And guess who she left them with? Reyna laughed. Zeke just sighed. Here we go again. Back at the outpost, he placed the cubs in a nest of furs, watching them curl into sleep. Ter stood nearby, watching, not with suspicion, but something close to pride. Don't get any ideas, he told her. I'm not starting a school. She growled softly. Okay. Maybe just a training program. He turned to the charm on his desk. The one the Hunt mother had given him that first week. It pulsed now and then, but less so these days. The real heartbeat of the clan wasn't in the charm. It was in the cubs. In the alliance. In them all. Later that night, Zeke recorded a final log for Federation Command. Personal log, Zeke Keller, designation Zarda. If you're hearing this, then you know by now what Mistral 4 became. Not a battleground. Not a colony. But a home. We didn't tame the wild here. It invited us in. And we learned how to be worthy of it. We are not the apex species here. But we were given a chance to stand beside those who are. Because when they left their cubs with me, they didn't see a human. They saw someone who would fight to protect something precious. I saw it too. And that changed me. So no, I'm not coming back to Earth. Not yet. There's more work to do here. And anyway, I've got cubs to feed. End log. The next morning, as the sun rose again over the jungle, Zeke stood on the ramp with his arms folded, watching the cubs tumble and snarl in the dust. One tried to pounce on his leg. He caught it midair and tossed it gently onto the furs, where it bounced once, then purred. Behind him, the Hunt mother watched silently from the trees. When he turned, she vanished again, leaving only claw prints. Zeke smiled. Anytime, he whispered. Then he looked to the sky as another star broke the horizon. A Federation freighter. Bringing supplies. Another one would follow soon. And another. But none of them would ever understand how this place had changed. Not until something wild and dangerous trusted them enough to leave a cub behind. And waited to see what kind of human would raise it.